Welcome to Her Ink Empire. I'm Justine Almaraz, and this is the podcast that redefines what's possible for you in the tattoo industry and in your tattoo education, not only in technical skills, but in business. This show is for fine artists, creatives, visionaries, artists of all kinds, even doodlers, who are ready to not just build a career, but a legacy. Here we merge mastery, freedom, and creative power to surpass the outdated industry norms, the outdated rules, and step fully into our creative power and roles as leaders in our communities. If you've ever felt like there has to be a better way, a better option to learn tattooing, to earn in this industry, and to lead in tattooing, you're in the right place. So let's build your empire, one bold, daring step at a time. Let's dive in.
Thank you. How's your day been?
Been pretty good, kind of slow going, but we've had some interesting weather up here in the Pacific Northwest, going from typical spring to atmospheric river to heat wave. So,
Oh,
but the animals are having a great time, so we're doing good.
okay, that's good. I'm glad. Awesome. How are your tattoos doing?
Pretty good. As you can see, these are some of the older ones, the new one in process. Still
Yeah.
kind of working on, doing really good. I get lots of comments on them. I think it's a very unique style, and all of the beautiful colors too really stand out to people.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad to hear that. I'm excited because we're working on that mermaid soon too.
Yep. She's
Sure.
almost time.
Almost. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you being open to talking with me about your experience. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I'd love to also do like maybe have you just sort of introduce yourself as like what you're passionate about right now, what's exciting you about the projects you're working on, maybe the podcast or anything in your work, because you're doing incredible stuff in the world. So
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Kelsey Harper. I am a clinical psychologist, and I offer virtual therapy for folks with trauma, with complex trauma, with borderline personality disorder in lots of different states. And I have a podcast called Initiated Survivor, where I speak directly to the issues facing survivors of gender-based violence and sexual violence. I'm a survivor myself, so that's a topic that's really important to me. And I share a lot about my own recovery story. And that was part of why I wanted to come on and record a little bit about this, because the intuitive tattoos were actually a key part of my own healing process from my trauma as well. And I have three, I'm counting in my mind three, right? That also kind of marks some of that journey, which is really cool. And so I'm excited to talk about that. That's one of my biggest passions, is just like all the different ways that we can heal and repair and recover from things that happen to us. And how like using a wide variety of ways can actually be really, really powerful and helpful. And I also love talking about mental health. I'm also a little witchy, so that also is part of why intuitive tattooing really stood out to me. The idea of making it ritualized and ceremonial, and something that was unique and individualized, felt really magical, and it absolutely was. The whole process was very magical and is very magical going through it. It makes the tattoos just feel incredibly personal. And I like to, dabble in some different types of ways of engaging in some witchy type of ways of honoring the turning of the seasons and stuff like that. And yeah, right now in my free time, I'm doing a lot of ceramics. I started learning like pottery and stuff like that. And so it's fun to be like as a beginner doing something totally brand new, and just kind of seeing where it goes. It's definitely teaching me a lot of surrender because there's so many processes that can totally change what you're making. And then also, I like spending time with my animals. I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. I love being out in the forests. And yeah, and I also am a writer. I like writing fun fictional stories about, powerful scenes with women doing some awesome shit. So, yeah,
That's so cool.
thanks.
Awesome. Big stuff. Also, you recently moved, well, last year to the Pacific Northwest. And like, how has that been? What a change from Los Angeles to where you are now, like literally kind of like what your background is, like in the
Yeah.
forest with your views that you showed me. And how have you noticed a big difference like in your nervous system shift?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was really interesting. It was unexpected at first. Like I knew that because I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, and so I knew that I had wanted to return at some point and wanted to test this out to see if this specific area would be one that really felt like home to me. And it's very, very Pacific Northwest. There's lakes and the bay and trees and islands, and deer come up and eat bird seed off of my like little bird feeders. It's really cool. But yeah, I was not expecting the shift inside of myself that would occur, and it definitely felt like these different stages of, I guess, transformation and adjustment. Because living in Los Angeles, like I love LA. I definitely wasn't leaving because I had any problems with LA. It just was time to go, and really love the culture there and how much it supports creativity and community and stuff like that. And then when I moved up here, and I'm not out in like the sticks, like where there's nobody. I'm actually near a pretty significant city. But the first thing that struck me was like how few people I actually run into compared to Los Angeles, of just like driving down the street in LA. It's like tons and tons of humans are everywhere. You're very aware that there's just a lot of people around, and here it's not as much at all. And at first, it felt very isolating and lonely. And then it started to feel much more free, of like, this is giving me a lot of space to kind of come back to who I am or how I want to be in this space. And it helped also that there's a little bit of this like Disney fairy tale princess kind of thing happening with all of the animals that come by. So I've been leaning into that a lot and trying to figure out like what kinds of foods all the different animals prefer, and make sure I'm picking up the dried fruit that the deer particularly like.
What
And
do they like? What do the deer like?
the deer really like dried berries and dried apricots, at least the ones by my place. Particularly the apricots. I was surprised by that because I think they smell kind of weird, but like they immediately jumped for those. But yeah, and so it felt like getting a lot of space to kind of just explore more about like where I am and who I am right now. And not that LA was not letting me do that. It was more like LA was a home, a very important home for a specific period of my life. That turned out to be a lot about recovery and healing and finding myself in that way. And now coming up here, I also just turned 42, which I'm really excited about. I call it my no fucks 40s. And it felt like kind of settling into a new place with myself, that feels much more gentle and, kind of just genuine and more present and intentional. And so it feels like there's a lot of space here to explore that. And, a lot of just like mental, emotional space as well as physical space. And I gravitate a lot towards like mythology of trees, and even just some of the really cool things that come out about the science of trees and how they communicate, and see them as like these great elders and wise elders. So I also kind of feel a little bit of like being nurtured by the wise elders up here too.
Hmm, that's so cool. I'm just really, really happy for you to be, that you took the big leap and are totally immersed yourself in nature and just are so present with it every day. Like we really don't get that here in LA.
Yeah.
So, and that's something why I think intuitive tattooing in my process is the way it is because I want to cultivate that presence. Like, even in, you've been into my new studio in downtown, and it's like there's a lot of stuff going on in there. And too, how did that feel? I mean, because you've been tattooed now in 3 of my different studios. Were you able to kind of like come into the presence of your experience, even
Yeah.
in the intensity of the city?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think I was actually really surprised by that because downtown is a particularly busy area of Los Angeles. But the way your studio is designed, it's, even just walking into it down the hallway, it's kind of like there's just a lot of mystery doors. You have no idea what's going to be on the other side. And then walking into your studio, it's just very open and spacious, and the energy of it is really, really peaceful and calm and creative, and especially creative energy is something that I really love and gravitate towards. And there was a sense of like, even as hearing certain things going on with the city bustling around, that there was this space of like existing within and also observing while being there too, that this is where I am, and this is the world that I'm a part of, and I can also observe it, and step aside from it and be like, yes, there's noises happening, and I'm here in this space right here. And so it actually, I think it's teaches us another lesson, or taught me another lesson around being able to also bring the energy I wanted to have into that. There's a lot of space that you created in the studio for there to be room for whatever energy I wanted to create. And for everybody there, especially, your specific area is this nice little corner space with all these windows and stuff. And it's just very, very comfortable and spacious.
Okay, good. I'm glad you had that kind of experience. I find that's my experience too. And it's really interesting to be that kind of, well, you're elevated, right? 4
Mhm.
stories up. And I feel that just exactly the way you described that. Like we're present with it, but yet observing it, and you're part of it, but at the same time observing it. There's this like kind of flow back and forth between it, which reminds me of kind of like how I think about the experience of being tattooed. Do you think there's like a connection to that too? Like how like I come into presence when I'm being tattooed with the experience, maybe even the pain, right? And then coming coming out of it and elevating my perspective on it from more of an outside feeling. This is occurring for this greater purpose or this greater intention, and then I'm suspended from that pain periodically, and then I come back and I'm present with it, and it's kind of like this flow between the two. Do you have any experience with?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think my experience is very similar of, especially with the tattoos having such specific intentions behind them. And also with them being intuitive. For me, like I really like that it's not necessarily a design that I know what it's going to turn out as. Not in the sense that like we don't discuss it and you don't draw it on me, like you do all of those things. Just to clarify for the audience, it's not like a blind tattoo, but that like it feels like being in the middle of a process because it is somewhat unexpected. I'm not coming in asking for a specific design. I'm asking for whatever your translation of an experience or an energy is. And so I think there's that of also the sensations of the tattoo, the pain, the strokes, that kind of stuff. And in my mind, like it can kind of paint a picture, and I'll always be surprised when I look down at what actually is coming up on my arm or on my chest, that kind of thing, because the sensation will be sometimes very, very different. Or I think I told you at some point, like some of the movements that you were making or the lines that you were drawing felt like they had a certain like movement or energy to them, that reminded me of like racing cars or of sounds or of like swinging really fast through air, even though it's just like a line on a tattoo. And so I do think also like the tattoo with the pain, but also with the way that for me, the way my body responds to the pain and my mind responds to the pain, it's kind of like forced mindfulness in a way of like I'll notice myself trying to distract, trying to think about anything else, trying to do anything else, and I can't not pay attention. And not because it's like so super painful. I've definitely experienced worse pain, but more in the sense of just like my body is just like, "Psst, there's something happening right now, be with it." And I think, for me, that was also a very healing part of the experience. With my experience with my trauma and trauma recovery was kind of like a total splitting of me from my body, that like me and my body were no longer together, aligned. I was not in tune with it. I really like had very high pain tolerance because I wasn't attentive to it, very dissociated, didn't really understand what was or know what was going on with my body just because, when trauma happens like that, to me, it was like my body's now, a war zone. And so it was a very healing experience to then have this process where oddly like my maybe more nervous side of my mind was like maybe being dissociated is going to be helpful for a tattoo because you won't pay attention, you won't notice the pain. And actually it quite the opposite. It made me become very much at one with my body and feel a lot of different things with it. And it wasn't necessarily about like, is it painful? Is it pleasant? Is it okay? Is it tolerable? It was more just like, I'm just here with it. There's literally no place else to be. I cannot put my mind anyplace else. And it's right here. And the right here moment is something that is powerful and important and intentional and is happening for me. And that was really, really helpful. I remember with the first one that I got, there was when you were doing the shading, and I think it was at the very end of doing the shading, you hit a certain point like on the back of my shoulder, and I just like burst into tears. And it wasn't because that specific point like hurt really badly. It just was like I felt literally like there was just a button there that was like tear ducts open. And that also felt really important and interesting of like my body's going through something, it's going to express it in all these ways. And it's just about what's happening right now. And so there was a relationship with my body that was really repaired and healed through that process.
Wow. Yeah. Have you ever felt anything like that in the more recent sessions? Have you noticed anything kind of shifting in each? Because we've been doing a lot of sessions on this new sleeve, and it's all full color. And I always wonder too, because each session feels to me like the next almost like layer of the onion cracking open of your soul.
Mhm.
Of your growth of your soul, like your true self emerging more and more in each one. And I wonder if you feel that too. Can you feel
Yeah, yeah, I think the
emerging?
sense that I have is almost as though like each time going back, even though we're working on the same tattoo, that it's actually like something different every time. That rather than it being like we're just kind of continuing on the same tattoo, that it's more like there are different depth or different layers that are getting pulled out and different things added to it. And I still am surprised when I walk away, which, in a really nice way of what kind of came out of that session. So each session feels like it's also in and of itself a standalone experience, even though we're continuing to work on the same project. But yeah, that and I think it also goes really well with what my transition has been like with moving up here and kind of, and with the 40s and my own like recovery and stuff like that, and the idea of kind of coming into my own. And I think it's been very reflective of that too, because I think Like the first session, there was a lot of excitement and also a lot of like wild underestimation of how much time a sleeve takes to make. I was like, this will probably just take a couple hours.
Well, the other were quicker. The first few were,
Yeah.
and then color, like we're doing full blown rainbow,
Hmm.
no color fades. And
Yep.
like, underestimate too just how long those fades take too. So I'm getting better at that also. But yeah, go ahead, continue.
But that like also worked as kind of like a metaphor for my experience up here. Like I was expecting I'm going to move and make this transition and it's going to be perfect and smooth and I'm going to be dropped right in the place that I'm meant to be and life's just going to take off and it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And of course, that's not how it goes. There was a transition that definitely was a lot of growing and kind of like shedding, and outgrowing some of this old space that was really uncomfortable at first. Of like, I'm not really sure where this is headed. I'm not really sure like where I'm headed, how I'm going to feel through this, and trying to really get back into who I am and seeing that being in a new place where there is more space for me to be expressive and connect to myself, that there was there's a lot more to unfold. And it was really uncomfortable at first and surprising, and sometimes really uncertain as to what it was going to turn into, if it's going to be okay, if it's going to be what I'm wanting it to be. And then more and more as it's coming up, it's just like unfolding more about what's really here. And I think that's very reminiscent or very reflective of the tattoo experience too. I think we've done 3 or 4 sessions at this point, and I'm laughing at my old self. That was just like, let's just take 1 or 2. And but I think that's also because I think it was something you said even in our first session, like, oh, this will be such a wonderful thing that we can work on throughout your transition. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll come back a month later. So there's also something about it that feels like this lovely anchor point too, of I get to come back and revisit Los Angeles very literally, but also like revisit, this space that I was in before and get to feel connected back to what that did for me, this healing space, and how things have changed, how I'm kind of moving through that now, and that it's not so much of a like moving on as it is of just kind of continuing, like all of it's carried with me.
Mm-hmm. Kelsey, do you remember like the different intentions you had for each of the three tattoos? The first one was on your back. Then we brought it around your shoulders on the front of your chest. And now we're adding it onto your right arm.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, okay, so if the back is like your heart, and the back seems to represent generally, right? Like past heart healing and bringing more of that through and forward. Because if we can heal the past, we can start to bring that more forward. And then so you did in the next session, you literally brought that forward. And then you put it around your chest and upper shoulders, which is more of a personal power. And you made it more visible, big time.
Hmm.
And now what another level of bringing it full down into a full, bright, vibrant, fully saturated rainbow sleeve. I mean, do you remember the intentions from each one? I mean, it was a while ago, but
Yeah, I think I remember my first one, and it was actually one that I'd been thinking about for a long time because I had read about your intuitive tattoo process in like LA Magazine or some sort of like kind of local media periodical of some sort. And I was like, that sounds amazing. And I was definitely in a stage of like needing a lot of healing and repair, and not quite sure like what was going to come from anything, was not actually wanting to necessarily be like, I want to become this kind of person, I want to do this stuff with my life. It was more just like, I just want to feel whole again, and I want to, whatever whole is going to look like after this happened, knowing that like I can't go back to what I was like before, but wanting to feel whole with this having been my history, or having been my experience. And so that definitely felt like this tattoo on my back. And I would afterwards, I would use it as like a bit of a meditation anchor of almost imagining it like either wings that would kind of come around and would come out of the tattoo, and kind of like a safe, cozy embrace, or that like that would be kind of like the home of like any kind of protective boundary around me. And it also felt very divinely designed, like they're like the wings or the barrier were kind of placed in with some spiritual power or divine energy kind of thing, that it wasn't just coming from me, that this was something that was being offered as part of going through healing processes. And then when it came time for the one up here, and also like the just to be very clear, I didn't know that it was going to be on my back or on my collar. I didn't have any specifics. I was just like, I want an intuitive tattoo. I would love all color. Let's do the thing and see where it needs to go. And so the location was part of the process of that too. And so the collar felt kind of almost like a little bit of a crowning in a way of, having something be declared, being more open. It also felt like kind of having somebody put like almost like a cape or a hood on of like a ceremonial presentation, and I also loved that I could see it in the mirror, and other people could see this part of me every day. It was like this little hint of what I've been going through, and what I'm putting together and such. And that felt really powerful. It felt like more like I get to now be out in the world and a little bit more visible with who I am and some of my truth, without it necessarily being like overexposed, just more like, I get to allow myself to be seen. Whereas the one on my back felt very like special and private and personal. And it would be something like every now and then I would wear like a dress or a shirt that would have an open back to show it, but for the most part, it was just for me. And then this one is much more visible. And it was interesting then also interacting with people and having them tell me like what the tattoos brought to their mind and what it made them think and how they were responding to it. It was all very positive. And like things like, imagining that these were like vines coming around and like I was like this little forest nymph or something, or that these were just like flowers and I was like in like a kind of spring type of garden and stuff like that, and just everybody's different experience of them. And I've even had like a massage therapist talk about like symbolic things that they felt from them. Like they felt this back one was incredibly protective and that this collar was much more much more about like calming and healing, or different things like, and so it also became something that was an interesting like transaction with other people too, that they were experiencing something different from these. And then, yeah, a couple of years ago, I had it in my mind that I really wanted to do a full sleeve, that I liked the idea of having, a whole arm, decorated and having it feels very much like a very complete ownership. And that's how it's been feeling of like complete ownership of who I am. It's out there for people to see. It's all the way down to my fingers. And so it's very, very expressive and out there. And I really like that. And I've gotten a lot of positive comments on it. Everybody really excited about all the colors, not seeing tattoo styles this way in other places too. But yeah, I haven't yet gotten a lot of people talking about how they interpret the meaning, just like a lot of like, wow. One thing that was really cool was I went on a writer's retreat in Santa Fe. And I messaged you about this because I was somehow like the topic at the writers' retreat came back to mermaids. Everyone was talking about mermaids and mermaid symbolism and stories about mermaids and stuff like that. And one of the people there said that she was a free diver, and she thinks of herself as a free diver mermaid. And I remembered that when you made your mermaid flashes, and that was what the mermaid on here came from, you had mentioned that they were inspired by free divers. And I was like, and so I showed her, I was like, this is this is what my tattoo artist has designed based on free divers. And she then pulled up and showed me a photo, a professional photo of her in that exact pose, of someone falling through the water. And I liked what you titled it as surrender, because that felt to me kind of like such a valuable next step of like surrendering and emerging at the same time, and being held. And it was interesting too, because I messaged you, I was like, do you know this person? And you were like, no. That's just awesome. It's like literally the exact translation, and yeah, and it was really cool getting to talk with her and be in that space. It kind of felt also like a lovely like message from the universe that this is the type of community I belong in, is one that's like really expressive and creative and healing and very, very uplifting. Like it was a writer's retreat where everybody is just like really encouraging and supporting each other, not trying to break each other down into anything, just like really encouraging what kind of story you want to have come out of you. And yeah, and that felt like a very magical experience too, to run into a literal mermaid who has poses like that. But yeah, so it's been really cool having these tattoos. And I'm coming back to your original question about the intentions of them. The intentions have definitely shifted, especially because I've changed. And I think the tattoos are actually very much in alignment with that.
Mm. Wow. Well said. That's so cool. That was so cool that that happened, that she literally, her photo was in the exact same position.
Hmm.
So nuts. Yeah, the way that her pose is, it just feels like exactly that feeling you described. It is surrender, just like falling into that. Which sounds like that ultimately was the intention, like you're saying, of all the tattoos kind of coming together.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and it's funny too, because I think this is also the one that the sleeve is the one that I think maybe had the most planning on it, without it being still not planned at all, but just like, the other two, like, didn't know where the location was going to be, didn't really know like what it was going to be, what size it was, all that other stuff. And this one, it was definitely like, I want a full sleeve and I want it to be fully colored. And, can we incorporate one of your mermaids too? Or if not, like, let's put a mermaid on my other arm and then do a full sleeve. And so it's interesting because it does feel like the process was in and of itself very much about surrender, but also this kind of surrender into myself. Like, and I think that's also really captured by like that image of the person, the mermaid diving or falling backwards into the water and just floating downward, of like being fully immersed within yourself and my own depths. And that definitely feels very resonant to my experiences and what my life has been like for the last several years through getting these tattoos as well.
Mhm. Can you speak to your experience of numbing cream? Like, because I think that's something like a lot of people don't really give themselves permission to use, or feel that there's this old idea that you've got to, suffer through the pain or earn your tattoos. I'm curious how you feel about that, because we use it with you and it's
Mhm.
pretty awesome. But what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely have. I'm laughing because I'm like, I have a very conflicted relationship with numbing cream. In part because, if you've ever gotten a tattoo, you know that like shading with color is like the worst. As far as pain, it's beautiful, but it's extremely painful. And and it's hard to kind of bear through some of that. The way that doing like black tattoos or line tattoos, like totally easy. Like I have a little cello on my arm. Not a problem. I was like, this feels just like a really nice massage. And the shading can be just another depth of pain. And sometimes I think with wanting to be able to stick with the tattoo process a little longer, and allow for more space, for more design and more color to come through, that's where the numbing cream was incredibly helpful, because it buys time. Like, it's just, there's plenty of time where I'm not feeling much of that tattoo, not in the sense that it's like totally numb and I'm feeling nothing, because I'm still feeling the pressure, I'm still feeling the lines, I'm still feeling where you're going. It's just not excruciating, and that's really, really helpful, because then I can kind of relax into it and be there, and I think my adrenaline goes down, and I'm more present with it, and it feels like I can hang with the process a little bit more and get more of it done. The conflicted feelings is that it always wears off, and that when it wears off, because your arm is literally being tattooed, it goes to that. I always would hope that my arm would just be like, okay, the starting line for pain is now just down the road a bit. When it's like, no, you're starting with actually a full arm being tattooed kind of pain. And so it can come back and it can be pretty vivid. Like, it definitely feels like waking up with a really bad sunburn, and again, not that it's unbearable. We've done things where we've moved to different spots on my arm and like renumbed and stuff like that, and it has helped quite a bit. I definitely had some of those like self-judgment thoughts of like, am I kind of like cheating the system by, having a comfortable tattoo session? And, what helped me a lot was actually seeing a lot of other people who have gotten similar tattoos talk about the impact on their body and the pain and how much they're able to tolerate, and that it's really, really, really rough, in a sense. Like, it's very painful. Most people can only do 1 to 2 hours at a time of this kind of tattooing, and then they have the tattoo flu, which I got a couple of times, the little shock afterwards. And so it helped, because it also was kind of this validating sense of like taking care of myself, like this was a nice way of taking care of myself going through this process, that I can be in the moment and experience it a little bit longer. I'm not having to, just bear down for, as long as I possibly can, that I can rest and be with the space without it also being completely wiped out, so I'm still present with it and still experiencing it. But yeah, so I think I mean, overall, definitely trending positive experience with the different numbing creams and stuff, and using those, and also I think it's definitely taught me a lot more about being tender with myself too. Like, even like getting like a little bit of the tattoo flu afterwards, or there's kind of that feeling walking away from getting a tattoo of like being of like my body's just kind of like, oh, we're injured, and that kind of turning inward of like, I can nurture myself through this. I can offer myself a lot of care and gentleness. And I think it comes from the same space of like care and gentleness, to be like, you can use different things to help make sure that this doesn't totally derail anything or cause, overwhelming pain, trauma to the body, that kind of stuff. Like, this is something that can make this experience a lot more enjoyable, and I'm still going to take care of myself afterwards. And I also definitely learned how important snacks are. So, highly recommend snacks.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
The
Good point.
snacks.
Yeah, and eating a lot before you come in, for sure. So, have you ever done acupuncture?
Hmm.
So I have this experience too, like, how you were initially saying that when we were working on in this one spot on your back, that it triggered tears. I've had that experience on one spot on my stomach years ago in an acupuncture. Well, she was doing acupuncture, but she was doing a massage into my stomach in this one spot, triggered tears. And it was the same exact experience in this spot on my in the bend of my elbow, and when I was getting tattooed, and it was just the waterfalls just started, and it feels exactly like what you're saying, that there's this opportunity to nurture yourself, hold, like my job as the tattooer is to hold that sacred space for you to express all that needs to come out in whatever way that needs to come out, and that this space that we're creating together is designed for this, and
Mhm.
that there is purpose in that, and we want to acknowledge those moments because that's where the release is happening and the healing then has a chance to occur, and
Yeah.
wonder what your perspective on that is because you work on the trauma healing. And as a tattoo artist, the hardest part is that I actually am inflicting trauma on the body, but I think inadvertently, like this, it's it's activating the opportunity for deep emotional healing to occur
Mhm.
simultaneously.
Yeah, I think there's something that's also really valuable about that this is deliberate and purposeful and intentional. Like, so that the trauma on the body that's happening is not unconsensual or non-consensual. It's not something that is sudden and scary. The process is like it's understood, it's well known, it's discussed, like there's lots of communication, and it's intentional, it's deliberate. And so it's a very different experience, I think, for folks with that. It gets to be a healing process that you get to be a part of, but also that the trauma that's occurring on the body is actually feeling more like an emergence, like a trauma that comes from emerging, like, when thinking about like babies coming out of the birth canal and they're like screaming, and I mean, I imagine it's very scary. I imagine I obviously experienced it. I just can't remember. But or we know that there's a lot of cultures, a lot of indigenous cultures, in my ancestral roots, like tattooing was something that was used as different types of expressions, different types of memorials, things that you would earn, ways of communicating to yourself and to others. And the processes of the pain being inflicted on the body was a part of it. And not necessarily in this harmful way, but more in the sense of being at one with your body and as well at one with yourself, going through pain that you can tolerate, that you can experience, that you can deliberately heal and recover from as well. It also makes me think very similarly to like when somebody like injures or breaks their ankle or something and they have to go get it realigned. It's essentially like the doctor is re-breaking it. It's painful as hell. But what it's doing is it's making it so it can actually heal properly. And, this is kind of like, I think, going a step beyond too, of that it's in addition to it being kind of that like good, healthy pain in that way, but also it's something that becomes more transcendent and spiritual in that way. And I do think like I love that it connects to some of my ancestral roots as well as a practice too. And especially around self-expression and reclaiming, and the pain can be a part of that because it's really experiencing my body showing up exactly as it is in its vulnerable form, and like I said, like not being able to take my mind off of it, because of that, without necessarily pain being a bad thing, but pain being just a thing, a human thing.
I love that. That's such a good analogy for this. So good. Kelsey, is there anything else about this experience of being intuitively tattooed that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm like all the things. I think, you know what, there's one, I have a lot of gratitude, and admiration for this process because I was not necessarily expecting anything from my first tattoo, except that I just might get an interesting tattoo and see what happens. And it actually was a very key part of my healing and recovery process. Like, the ceremony of it, the ritual of it, the having this symbol with me, but also this, and I think this is the biggest part for me throughout it, is a process of reclaiming myself and reclaiming myself in a way that's very personal and individual, and is all mine. And that has been incredibly powerful. And I think that can be a powerful experience for anybody, in our world that is dealing with any kind of trauma or trauma recovery, any experience of oppression and our oppressive powers that are out there trying to tell us who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to believe, limiting who we get to be. This can be a beautiful way of reclaiming that, in a way that also is absolutely personal. And that I think is the thing that stood out the most to me was it really kind of guided me down this path of reclamation that I wasn't expecting. And I'm really glad it did.
Mm. I'm really glad it did too.
Yeah.
It's been such an honor to create these special, really impactful, large pieces on you and like see them integrate and see you integrate them and wear them with such power and pride and strength and then also seeing you do your work in the world too and how big and impactful your purpose is and the lives you're changing with that and you're out there and you're doing it big, Kelsey. It's really really powerful and beautiful work. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for offering up this space to get to share this story. It's something I love talking about with people and love getting to share this unique experience.
Thank you. Well, I think that your experience and you speak so eloquently and thoroughly. It's like I'm mesmerized. And what's cool is like we don't really talk that much during the session.
Yeah.
We go inward,
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to talk and like hear you just speak about it. So really special. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's actually really interesting because I think yes, it is very internal. And in my mind, like because you're there with me, it feels like you're also internal with me. And it doesn't necessarily like occur to me that like you actually don't have any idea what's going on internally.
Yeah, isn't
Um,
that funny?
mhm.
But on some level, it feels like I do, like you feel
Yeah.
it, right?
Oh yeah, no, I feel like it. I feel like you've been there the whole time. And I'm like, yes, you know exactly what I went through. Because you're like a steward in that, a guide, and then like kind of realizing, oh, actually, your experience might be that you don't necessarily know what's been happening internally for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm focused on a different job.
Yeah.
Or like pain management. Think through this, and I'm like, get this done as efficiently and quickly and thoroughly as possible. I think that becomes, we go into our zones.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Totally. Yeah, awesome. Are there any links or anything you want me to share that we can share with the listeners?
Yeah. Let's see, if you want to follow my professional work, about trauma recovery survivors, that kind of thing, my Instagram link is Kelsey J. Harper. You can also go to my website, which is DR as in doctor, drkelseyharper.com. You'll also see on my website, very much inspired by my rainbow intuitive tattoos. Even my logo is a little bit of very similar kind of like lotus flowered like the tattoo that's on my back. And so you'll see all of the colors coming up there too as my central theme. And yeah, if you want to just follow my creative works, I have an Instagram handle for called Kelsey's Favorite Villains because I like writing villain stories. And I also share like my ceramics and some of my forest stuff as well on there too. So yeah, they can check me out there.
Love that. Love that so much. That's beautiful. Cool. All righty. Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So fun talking with you.
Yeah, it's really great talking with you too.
Yeah. So when do I get to see you again in person?
I know, I've been thinking about that. I'm guessing it'll probably be the fall just because summer in Los Angeles was not my favorite season. Um,
Oh,
but
boy.
definitely soon, because I want to come in and get some more work done soon.
Okay. Gotta work on that mermaid.
Yes, yes, she
Cool.
is ready to emerge.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, I will see you in the fall and I'll see you online sooner. And big hugs to you.
Yes, yes,
Thank you
definitely.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and being a part of Her Ink Empire. Remember, this is only the beginning. Your empire is already unfolding. Until next time, stay bold, stay aligned, and stay true to you as you build your artistic legacy.